Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today I want to talk again about 10 gigabit Ethernet and ultimately help you decide if now in summer autumn 2023 is the time to jump on board with 10 gigabit Ethernet. We've covered the subject a lot here on the channel, but we're going to try and keep things just a wee bit more short form today. And today I'm going to give you 4 reasons why you should hop aboard the 10 gigabit Ethernet freight train right now, and 4 reasons where you might want to hang off a bit longer or just completely ignore it in its entirety. So without further ado, let's crack on with number 1. That's right, it's a bit bleeding obvious, but we've got to mention it. 10 GBE, 10 gigabit Ethernet, 10 gig, whatever you want to call it, it gives you 1,000, give or take, megabytes per second of bandwidth to play with there. Again, 10 GBE is 10 gigabit, or 1 gigabyte, or 1,000 megabytes. I'm sure there'll be a pedant in the comments that's going to correct me on the calculation with the extra 24. I know. Just let it fly, okay? Just on this one occasion. But 10 gig gives you 10 times, again, don't be the maths pedant, than 10 times the network connection of standard gigabit connectivity between your device, the router, the network, whatever way you want to look at it there. And that extra bit of bandwidth, with all of that extra data passing through it, could be what saves you a crap load of time. Getting the job done quicker, therefore taking less time, less man hours, and ultimately getting the job done that bit faster and a bit more profitable. Obviously, 10G can apply whether in the home or the business, and there are advantages either way. And depending on the packets of data you are using, it will make all the difference as to the advantages and the extent of the advantages that 10 gig will give you. And of course, those advantages that 10 gig grants you in terms of the data packets themselves have become even more present and even more important now in 2023 going into 2024 because of the size of our average files. Even down to the smallest thing, the documents that we make in Office 365, Google Docs, the photos we take on our high performance cameras that now when you use all of the settings onto full, you take an image, just a single image that you might have used to take a photo of a bus stop, you don't know my life, and that one photo to remind you of a bus time, that could be 5 to 20 megabytes in size. And we're taking photos all the time. The average video we make of our cat, again, you don't know my life, that video, that short 10-20 second video, can be into the double or even treble digits depending if you're using the 4K lens at 60 frames per second. And that's just a phone. What about if we move over to the average movie that we're watching right now, whether it is on our streaming service or the files that we download when we buy a special version of Avatar 2, which has our little download link. All of that stuff, all of that data is getting bigger. The average file size of everything has gone up. The days of floppy disks are long gone, and the larger those files, the bigger those files are that are passing through our network, not just downloaded from the internet, but our network, all of those devices, our phones, our tablets, our TVs, our whatever. And 10 GBE on supported devices opens up the bandwidth for more of that data to be able to travel at any given time, and therefore not only is data passing quicker between devices, but we can get more individual data passing all the way through it. And with the right network set up with a key storage device connected via 10 GBE to a switch, even if all of those connected devices are only on 1 gig each, they can still enjoy a full 1 gig connection each between that storage device if it's got 10G there in the middle. Files are getting bigger, your bandwidth and your network has to scale accordingly. Now, I know this point isn't going to be for everyone, but internet speeds are getting faster too. Now, on the face of it, you might be thinking, hang on, you were talking about local network connections there. What's the internet got to do with it? And you're right, that is a very valid stance to take, if a little bit finicky. But the average internet speeds across the world are getting bigger. Now, the average for any region has still not surpassed the gigabit mark. The average anywhere, US, UK, most of Europe, the East, the average has still not exceeded the gigabit internet speed in upload or download. But the point is, the average hasn't. what we're seeing is an increase in more and more places having greater than gigabit internet speeds there. So though not everyone's got access to it, more and more people are getting access to it. More and more internet service providers, ISPs, are including packages that may be a little pricier, but internet speeds that are greater than gigabit internet speeds. Why is that important to your network? Well, most users have the internet running into their home or business, and then it is being fed into a router or a sophisticated router switch combo, or a router and then into a switch for everyone else to enjoy. And if you're a small user, if you're 1, 2, 3 users, something like that, and you've got this greater than gigabit internet connectivity coming in, which again, once you reach a gigabit, you are talking about 100 megabytes, I should say, of internet connectivity coming down. The result is that if you have only 1 GBE, you're getting throttled all the way along. Now, obviously, if you've got loads of users connected to the internet, that's not going to be a problem. But if it's only 1, 2, maybe 3 users, and you've got a particularly interesting, and by interesting, I mean bloody fast internet connection coming into your house that's, ranged in the gigabits, plural, you're going to want to make sure that your local network is not throttling that speed. And that's another reason why the scaling up towards 10 GBE on a local area network may be beneficial. This is a very niche point. Not everyone's going to benefit from this, and I appreciate it's a minor point. But it's a point that if you're investing in tech now for the future and you don't intend to buy again in 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, that it is a concern, as gigabit internet speeds are becoming a lot more accessible and arguably more affordable. And talking about affordable, if we flick over here to my laptop, we can see right now that when it comes to 10 GBE upgrades right now, in summer going into autumn 2023, they've become increasingly affordable. You can see, for example, 10G upgrade cards for PCIe, and particularly sophisticated ones with dedicated controllers as well. We can see them knocking around for $74 here. I've even seen cheaper than that if you go for ones that don't have comprehensive heating or sophisticated controllers. Moving forward, we can go into dual port cards. So again, now we've got 2 10 gig ports there, and again, that is just $10 more than the previous one at $89. Moving forward, 4 port cards if you want to start talking about fiber-based connections, SFP, and that one at $200 may seem like a lot, but that's an enormous amount of bandwidth to play with there. Moving forward, we can look at 10G to Thunderbolt adapters. That's right, even if you're using laptops now, it doesn't stop you accessing 10 GBE with Thunderbolt to 10G adapters knocking around for around the 200 nicker mark. So again, you've got access to 10 GBE quite readily and easily. And then when you start looking at a lot of these upgrade cards and their affordability, moving forward into more cards that now take advantage of SSP and copper, we're just seeing more and more affordable 10G cards. Moreover, when you're looking at fiber-based cards like this one, which are increasingly affordable, we then find out that if you go for the fiber-based one, thinking now I'm going to have to buy lots of fiber cables and transceivers, you don't even really have to do that, because you can go ahead now and get very affordable adapters that will allow you to connect to a 10G device via SFP and then use traditional copper, thereby eliminating the restrictions of being locked in on fiber-based internet cabling, which is much more expensive, and reutilising all of your copper cables there. These adapters are becoming more available and dropping in price consistently. Then you look at the drop in price of 10G switches, and of course managed versus unmanaged will make a difference, but even with unmanaged switches on their own, we're seeing more and more switches arrive with 10 GBE, and we've got 3 here on this switch for 149 nicker, so that's 8 1 gig ports, and we've got the combo ports there that are 3 of them at 10 gig each. Throw in some of those adapters and you can have a dedicated copper setup there incredibly affordably. And again, these switches become more diverse, and again, we've seen QNAP really enhance and embrace this area of this technology. We're seeing the third parties again become more competitive, and this is an 8-port 10G switch for 168 nicker. Yes, it's unmanaged, but still, that is 80 gigabit of potential connectivity there. And again, with an internal management of 160. Then we're seeing affordable 10G NASs arrive on the scene, getting increasingly desirable and increasingly affordable. Just something that's growing in popularity all the time, and with 10G solutions arriving more affordably than, in some cases, 1 gig alternatives with the same hardware, more on that later on, 10GBE is not only becoming more desirable but more affordable across a number of different hardware mediums. But of course, it's simply not that cut and dry. And alongside those 4 reasons why you might want to embrace 10GBE, it's worth highlighting there are 4 reasons why you might want to give it a miss entirely, or at least wait it out on the clock. This is one I think a lot of users could stand to really stop and think about, but having 10 gigabit Ethernet bandwidth does not automatically translate to 10 GBE speed, because what you are developing is a 10G pipe. But if you're not pushing that much water to fill the pipe, it may be going completely unnecessary. Now, my earlier point when you could have a 10G connection and you've got multiple users enjoying it is still valid. But if that's not your network setup, and you were just going to connect your PC via 10G to a 10G switch or a 10G NAS, if the 10G NAS doesn't have sufficient media inside, and by that I of course mean hard drives and SSDs that combined in the right RAID configuration are able to generate 1000 megs per second, you're not going to get that speed. Now, your host device might be running on an NVMe SSD, it might be running on a couple of SATA drives all combined together in a RAID, fine. But if you're not achieving via the connected NAS, via the connected network, via the connected internet connection, or any one of the connected devices on that network, 10G, and you're not running up a lot of them simultaneously to add up to 1000 megs, there's every possibility that you're going to upgrade to 10G and never have needed to in the first place. So make a point of assessing the actual bandwidth speed you're going to need, not obviously now and long term, and work out is if you have the sufficient clients surrounding network peripherals and accessories to actually saturate a 10G connection in the first place. That's right, we've had to return to the laptop because as affordable as 10GBE devices have become, as I mentioned earlier on, it should be mentioned that 2.5 gigabit Ethernet devices have also become exceedingly affordable. For those that aren't aware, 2.5 GBE is 2.5 times the performance speed of standard gigabit Ethernet speeds, but it's a quarter of the speed of 10 GBE. But upgrading towards 2.5 GBE has become incredibly affordable. Now, before those of you go to the comments and say, well, 2.5 GBE is a fad, it's a waste of time, go straight to 10G, wait until the end of this point, okay? Because right now, for as little as $14.99, you can upgrade almost any device to 2.5 gigabit Ethernet. You can upgrade a device from 1 gig to 2.5 times that speed for just 14 nickel. Now remember, when I mentioned earlier on about those upgrades, it cost for a Thunderbolt 10G adapter 200 nickel to go to that price point there. That maths does not work out. And remember, that's a Thunderbolt upgrade there. At the moment, there are no USB to 10G upgrades. So if you were looking to upgrade a device that doesn't have a PCIe upgrade slot, it's so much more affordable to upgrade towards 2.5 GBE than it is to 10 GBE if you don't have a PCIe upgrade slot. The adapters are just ready available. And when it comes to getting 2.5 gig, you can get, for example, a 4-port card. Now, again, there will be those of you that say, why go for a 4-port card when over here you were showing us 1, 2 and 4-port cards at relatively competitive pricing. And you're right, they are still quite competitive. But if you were never going to upgrade your full network connection to 10G and you don't think you're going to in future, and you can upgrade a lot more devices readily and easily to 2.5G, some of these cards are actually worth a look, and particularly with the increase in support of something called SMB multi-channel, which allows you to easily bond multiple ports without utilizing sophisticated switches and sophisticated network hardware in order to get the job done, such as utilizing managed devices in link aggregation and port trunking. 2-port cards, $39 there, $43 for another 2-port card there, and moving forward, a $77 4-port card as well. These things are still readily affordable there. Now, moving forward, we look at the switches. Now, it should be highlighted that 2.5G switches have not become hugely affordable yet. They're cheaper than they were, but they could still stand to be noticeably cheaper, but more on the switches later on. What has become affordable is Wi-Fi 6 over USB devices, Wi-Fi 6E devices over USB, and Wi-Fi 6 and 6E is 1.2 gigabit connections, higher than 1 gig, not as high as 10 gig, but still very affordable. And then when we talked about NAS earlier on, yes, we could talk about affordable 10G NAS solutions. Again, this is the TerraMaster F422, and that's got an older generation Intel 4000 Celeron processor, and it's got 10G on there. But right now, you can get hold of 2.5 gig NASes, again, at the same price as 1 gig NASes were before, but now with multiple 2.5 gig ports. And once you combine that with things like SMB multi-channel, you combine that with some of those USB adapters, some of which you can connect directly into these devices to add more 2.5 gig ports, and therefore make the use of 4 gig cards even more appealing. There's just a lot of scope for upgradability very affordably and in a more granular fashion if utilizing 2.5 gig rather than 10 gig overall. And if you're still not convinced, the affordability of hybrid 2.5 gig and 10 gig routers such as this is one that's got 4 2.5 gig ports and 2 10 gig ports, are even more affordable and desirable. And the same goes with QNET themselves releasing a switch not unlike that, with 4 2.5 gig ports and a couple of 10 gig, and that's a copper one, that's not even kind of locking you in on fiber. 2.5 gig and 5 gig devices have become increasingly affordable and desirable. And if you don't think you're going to fully saturate a 10 gig connection of bandwidth, or you don't think you're going to be upgrading the rest of your network easily, these devices towards 2.5 and 5 gig are hugely affordable, accessible, desirable, and just overall a good choice for a lot of users rather than 10 gig. Now, this next point goes out to those of you that are a little bit more power conscious, running a little bit more moderate level mid-tier systems, but 10GBE can be quite power hungry and also requires quite a lot of heat sinks to dissipate that heat, and much like say SSDs when they get overused, does have the potential to throttle in higher temperatures. Now, we can go for 2 very clear examples here. 10GBE upgrade cards, the better ones that you see there on the market, arrive with their own dedicated controller on board. They also arrive with a heatsink or sometimes active fan, as you've seen earlier on, in order to dissipate a lot of that heat. A lot of that heat is being generated also by power consumption on the system, and those of you that use 10GBE for things like video editing should be aware that it may put a strain on your system architecture. Now, if you were using beefy hardware anyway, who cares? Because you're already running an Intel i5 12th 13th Gen 6 8-core system. You were already well into your power consuming heat generated environment. But what about those of you who are more moderate systems, more ARM based systems? We see ARM based NASs all the time running with 10GBE ports that they can't possibly fully saturate due to the limitations of the CPU in conjunction with the rather efficient design 10G controllers. Now, PCIe cards don't really apply to this rule as much because you're already using a big old tower system and you've got a big enough PSU, and not that this was going to make much of a dent on that anyway, but you're not that fussed about it. But those of you on portable systems, those of you that are utilizing battery operated systems, dare I say it, devices that are built around efficiency and 24/7 rarely powered down systems, you know, like your MacBooks, like your Thunderbolt enabled laptops, if you're using Thunderbolt to connected 10G adapters like some of the ones we've talked about, not only will these get quite hot because they are bus powered, but on top of that, the draw they have on the system, and again, video editors, let me know in the comments, those of you that have ever edited via a 10G to Thunderbolt adapter, you will know that it puts a weird strain on your system background resources. For some reason, your GPU seems to be working pretty hard. For some reason, your system fans are kicking in. And that's because even though you're using a Thunderbolt 10G adapter and the Thunderbolt device is getting quite warm, your internal Thunderbolt adapter and your Thunderbolt controller is having to work a lot harder as well, more than it normally would if you just connected a Thunderbolt external drive. So just bear in mind that 10GBE via upgrades will increase your power consumption and increase heat, and depending on the rest of the system hardware architecture, will put an undue strain on some components on less aggressive systems. Now this last one isn't going to affect everyone. I'm going to be straight with you. It's not even going to affect most users. It's going to affect a certain contingent. But I'm going to be straight with you. Those affected users are going to be so pissed about this. And that is that some more affordable 10GBE appliances, components, upgrades do not support something called auto negotiation. Now auto negotiation works with the controller on the 10GBE that when the 10GBE network adapter connects with a device that isn't 10GBE, it will scale down. It will auto-negotiate traditionally from 10GBE to 5GBE to 2.5GBE to 1GBE and even less, depending on the hardware architecture you're using. Now, why is that important? Because there are some users who are more granularly upgrading their network environment. Maybe they have upgraded to 2.5GBE with some of the appliances I've talked about. Maybe some of the devices they are utilizing aren't full 10G, but they allow some modicum of auto flow negotiation in the middle. So they were hoping to upgrade things more granularly to 10GBE throughout the network environment and wanted to take advantage of auto negotiation to kind of give some devices a partial upgrade or half saturate the 10GBE, or basically fill up that 10GBE pipe we mentioned earlier with a few more moderate and incremental sharing upgrades. And if you go for 10GBE upgrades that do not support auto negotiation, you really do have a very hot cold 1G 10G network in its entirety, and it may force your hand to have to upgrade a lot more appliances a lot more quickly in order to really make the most and return on investment on the 10G upgrade on these other devices that were somewhere in the middle, or worse still, make you regret upgrading to 10GBE now when you could have held out a little while longer and saved yourself a bit of buns. So just bear in mind that not all 10GBE devices support auto negotiation. I'm aware this isn't going to affect everyone, and it'll only affect a small group of people, but those people will notice. But this has been, should you upgrade to 10GBE now or wait a little bit longer? I've tried to keep this short form, but unfortunately this is still a dense subject I tried to keep as chewable and user-friendly as possible, but we're still talking networking. There's only so far you can go. Let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe you disagree, maybe you agree. Let me know below. If you want to learn more, we've done loads of guides on 10GBE and they should be linked below in video and article form. If you need more help, there's our free advice section, the big blue button on the right hand side of the page on every NAS Compare article. On top of that, use our Discord on a free community support forum. If you want to find out more or want more direct person-to-person support, you can head over to Patreon and Ko-Fi, where we've got private hire options there, as well as some of our tiered memberships, which allow us to not only share with you some kind of background behind-the-scenes stuff, as well as exclusive content, but on top of that, there are ways to get involved in our support Zooms, our webinars, and have some one-to-one support that we can give you there. Check out the services and the membership tiers below. It's a bit wanky, I know it is, but it allows us to keep this ship going forward here at NAS Compares when it's just me and Eddie doing this. Lastly, there's links to all of the guides that I've mentioned below, along with hopefully links to a lot of the products I've talked about today that you can go for down there. And using those links will result in a little bit of money from your purchase heading here to the channel. If you're going to go to those shops anyway and you want to passively support us, use those links. Me and Eddie, we are genuinely the only people here at NAS Compares. We'll be incredibly grateful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.